The proposal. Emma Torres adjusted her simple blue dress and checked her reflection in the hallway mirror of the Blackwood mansion. At 26, she had been working as a nanny for 3 years, but this job felt different. The sprawling estate overlooked the Pacific Ocean, and every morning brought the same routine: prepare breakfast, wake 6-year-old Grace, and maintain professional distance from her employer. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The sound of small feet running down the marble staircase made Emma smile. Grace Blackwood appeared in pink pajamas, her dark curls bouncing as she launched herself into Emma's arms. "Good morning, sunshine." Emma laughed, catching the energetic child. "Ready for pancakes? With chocolate chips?" Grace asked hopefully. "Just a few," Emma winked, leading her toward the kitchen. Daniel Blackwood descended the grand staircase 15 minutes later, already dressed in his charcoal suit. At 34, he commanded respect in every room he entered. His tech company had made him one of the youngest billionaires in California, but success came with a price. His wife Rebecca had died in a car accident 2 years ago, leaving him to raise Grace alone. "Daddy!" Grace called out, syrup dripping from her fork. "Emma made princess pancakes." Daniel's stern expression softened as he looked at his daughter. Emma noticed how his green eyes crinkled when he smiled genuinely. She had observed this transformation countless times, yet it still caught her off guard. "They look delicious." "Sweetheart," he said, ruffling Grace's hair before turning to Emma. "Could I speak with you privately after breakfast?" Emma's stomach tightened. In 3 years, he had never requested a private meeting. She nodded, continuing to cut Grace's pancakes while her mind raced through possible reasons. After Grace skipped off to play in her room, Emma found Daniel pacing in his study. The tall windows overlooked the manicured gardens, but he seemed oblivious to the beautiful view. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and she noticed his hands shaking slightly. "Mr. Blackwood, is everything all right?" Emma asked, remaining near the doorway. He stopped pacing and faced her. "Emma, I need to ask something that will sound completely insane." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What is it?" "I received a call this morning from Tokyo. The Yamamoto Corporation wants to meet with me about a merger that could save my company from a hostile takeover." He ran his hands through his dark hair. "The problem is, Mr. Yamamoto is extremely traditional. He only does business with stable married men." Emma frowned. "But sir, you are married." "I mean, you were married. He knows I'm widowed, but he expects me to have remarried by now. He believes unmarried men are unreliable in business." Daniel's voice grew desperate. "Emma, I need you to pretend to be my wife for 1 week." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She gripped the doorframe for support, staring at Daniel's face to see if he was joking. Its expression remained deadly serious. "You want me to what?" she whispered. "I know how it sounds," Daniel continued quickly. "But you're the only person I trust completely. Grace adores you, and anyone who met us would believe we're together naturally." Emma's mind reeled. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm your employee. I'm just a nanny from a small town in Texas. I don't know anything about high society or business dinners. You underestimate yourself." Daniel stepped closer. "You have natural grace and intelligence. You've been part of this family for 3 years. You know Grace better than anyone, and you understand how I work. What exactly would this involve?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible. "A few business dinners, maybe a charity gala. You'd stay in the guest suite, and we'd just need to appear affectionate in public." He paused. "I'd pay you $100,000. Emma's knees nearly buckled. That amount would pay for her mother's cancer treatments and her younger brother's college tuition. Her family's financial struggles had kept her awake most nights for the past year. "My mother needs surgery," Emma found herself saying. "Treatments are experimental and not covered by insurance." "Then help me, and I'll help your family," Daniel said softly. "Emma, I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice. This merger is the only thing standing between Grace and losing everything. Her mother left for her future." Emma thought about Grace's bright smile and boundless energy. The little girl had lost so much already. Could Emma really be responsible for her losing more? What would happen if people found out the truth? Emma asked. "The deal would collapse. Yamamoto Corporation would withdraw, and my company would be vulnerable to acquisition. Grace's trust fund, her education, her entire future would disappear. Emma closed her eyes, weighing the impossible choice. Her modest savings account contained barely enough for her mother's next treatment, let alone the surgery that could save her life. Her brother Jake had already taken out massive student loans, but they weren't enough to cover his final year of medical school. What about Grace? What would she think about this arrangement? Daniel's expression grew pained. She's been asking for months when I'm going to find her a new mommy. She's mentioned several times that she wishes you could be her real mother. Those words pierced Emma's heart. Grace had indeed made such comments, usually while Emma was braiding her hair or reading bedtime stories. The child craved a complete family, and Emma had often caught herself daydreaming about what that might look like. I don't know if I can convincingly play the role of a billionaire's wife, Emma admitted. You won't be playing a role, Daniel said, his voice surprisingly gentle. You'll just be yourself. The woman who makes Grace laugh every day. The woman who runs this household better than any professional could. The woman who... He stopped abruptly. Who what? Emma prompted. Daniel looked away. The woman who has made this house feel like a home again. Emma felt heat creep up her neck. In 3 years, Daniel had maintained perfect professional boundaries. He was polite but distant, never sharing personal details or acknowledging the way her pulse quickened when he entered a room. When would this start? She asked. Monday. The meetings begin Monday evening with dinner at the Ritz-Carlton. Emma had exactly 3 days to transform from a nanny into a convincing billionaire's wife. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. I'll take all the time you need. Daniel moved closer and she caught the scent of his cologne. But Emma, I want you to know that regardless of your decision, you'll always have a place in Grace's life. She needs you. As Emma walked back toward the kitchen, her mind churned with possibilities and fears. Could she really pull off such an elaborate deception? More importantly, could she spend a week pretending to be married to the man she had been secretly in love with for 2 years without revealing her true feelings? That evening, Emma called her mother from her small apartment above the garage. Margaret Torres had raised Emma and Jake alone after their father left when Emma was 12. Despite working 2 jobs, she had always prioritized her children's education and happiness. Sweetheart, you sound worried, her mother said after Emma's careful explanation of a bonus opportunity at work. Mom, how's the pain today? Emma asked. Instead of answering, you know me, I'm tougher than old boots. But Emma could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Don't you worry about me, honey. Focus on that beautiful little girl you care for. After hanging up, Emma sat in her tiny living room, staring at the stack of medical bills on her coffee table. The numbers blurred together, but the total remained frighteningly clear. Without the experimental treatment, her mother had perhaps 6 months to live. Emma barely slept that night, tossing between hope and terror. By sunrise Saturday, she had made her choice. She would accept Daniel's proposal, not just for the money, but because she genuinely wanted to help Grace keep her family's legacy intact. When she knocked on Daniel's study door that morning, her hands were steady for the first time in days. I'll do it, she said simply. Daniel's relief was visible. Thank you, Emma. I promise I'll make this as easy as possible for you. What's the first step? She asked. Shopping? Daniel smiled for the first time since Thursday. You'll need an entirely new wardrobe. We should probably get you a wedding ring, too. The mention of a wedding ring sent butterflies dancing in Emma's stomach. For 1 week, she would wear Daniel Blackwood's ring and pretend to be his wife. The line between fantasy and reality was about to become dangerously blurred. As Emma walked back to her apartment to pack for the most important week of her life, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. She was about to step into a world of luxury and deception, armed with nothing but her love for Grace and her desperate hope that she could pull off the performance of a lifetime. The game was about to begin, and Emma Torres was all in. The transformation Sunday morning arrived with California sunshine streaming through the mansion's floor-toozling windows. Emma stood in the guest suite that would be her home for the next week. Surrounded by shopping bags from Beverly Hills' most exclusive boutiques, the previous day's shopping expedition with Daniel's personal stylist had been overwhelming. "Miss Torres, are you ready for your etiquette lesson?" called Beatrice Morgan, the elegant woman Daniel had hired to prepare Emma for high society events. Emma smoothed her new silk blouse and opened the door. Beatrice was 50-something with silver hair pulled into a perfect chignon and eyes that missed nothing. "We have exactly 6 hours to polish your social skills," Beatrice announced, gliding into the room. "Let's begin with posture." For the next 3 hours, Emma learned to walk in designer heels, hold a wine glass properly, and make small talk about art and politics. Her natural intelligence helped her absorb the lessons quickly, but she felt like an actress preparing for the role of a lifetime. During lunch, Grace peppered Emma with curious questions while they shared sandwiches in the garden. "Emma, why are you wearing such fancy clothes?" the 6-year-old asked, tilting her head. "And why did Daddy buy you that pretty ring?" Emma looked down at the stunning diamond on her left hand. Daniel had presented it that morning, explaining, "It was a family heirloom that had belonged to his grandmother." "Oh, sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups have to dress up for important meetings," Emma said carefully. "Your daddy has some very important business this week. Are you going to be my new mommy?" Grace asked with hopeful eyes. Emma's heart clenched. "Oh, Grace, you know I love you very much, don't you?" "Yes, but I want you to love Daddy too, so you can stay forever." Before Emma could respond, Daniel appeared on the terrace looking devastatingly handsome in casual khakis and a white button-down shirt. "How are my favorite girls doing?" he asked, and Emma noticed how naturally the possessive phrase rolled off his tongue. "Daddy, I was asking Emma if she's going to marry you," Grace announced with characteristic directness. Daniel's eyes met Emma's across the table. She saw a flicker of something she couldn't identify. "What did you tell her?" he asked softly. "I told her that some questions are very complicated," Emma replied, her cheeks warming under his gaze. That evening arrived faster than Emma expected. She stood before her bedroom mirror, hardly recognizing herself in the elegant navy dress that hugged her curves perfectly. Her brown hair had been styled in soft waves, and professional makeup enhanced her natural features. A knock on her door made her pulse quicken. "Emma, it's time," Daniel called. When she opened the door, his reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His green eyes widened, traveling from her face, down to her heels, and back up again. "Look stunning," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Thank you," Emma whispered, accepting the wrap he offered. When his fingers brushed her shoulders, electricity shot through her body. "Are you ready for this?" Daniel asked as they walked toward his black Mercedes. "As ready as I'll ever be," Emma replied, though her stomach was doing somersaults. Ritz-Carlton's private dining room was filled with Tokyo's most powerful business leaders. Emma recognized Mr. Yamamoto immediately from the photos Daniel had shown her. He was a distinguished man in his 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything. Danielson and Mr. Yamamoto greeted them with a slight bow. "This must be your beautiful wife." "Emma, darling," Daniel said, his arm sliding around her waist with practiced ease. "I'd like you to meet Mr. Yamamoto." Emma smiled graciously, remembering Beatrice's lessons about maintaining eye contact and speaking clearly. "It's such an honor to meet you, Mr. Yamamoto. Daniel has told me so much about your company's innovative work." Mr. Yamamoto's stern expression softened slightly. "Your husband speaks of you with great affection, Mrs. Blackwood. He tells me you have been married for 3 years. Emma's heart skipped, but she maintained her composure. It's been wonderful watching Grace grow up. She's become such a bright, curious child." "Ah, you have a daughter." Mr. Yamamoto nodded approvingly. Family is the foundation of all success. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself relaxing into the role. Daniel's hand remained on her back, occasionally rubbing small circles that sent shivers down her spine. When she spoke, he looked at her with such apparent adoration that she almost believed it herself. "Your wife is quite charming," Mr. Yamamoto told Daniel during the main course. "She has the grace of a woman who understands her place in supporting her husband's endeavors." Emma bristled internally at the old-fashioned sentiment, but she squeezed Daniel's hand under the table and smiled sweetly. "Daniel makes it easy. To support him, she said. His dedication to both his work and our family is truly admirable. Daniel's fingers tightened around hers, and when she looked at him, something flickered in his eyes that made her breath catch. After dinner, as they walked to the car, Daniel was unusually quiet. "How do you think that went?" Emma asked nervously. "Better than I could have hoped," Daniel replied, but his tone was distant. "Did I do something wrong?" He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Emma, you were perfect. That's the problem." "I don't understand." Daniel ran his hand through his hair, the gesture she'd come to recognize as his tell when he was struggling with something. "The way you handled yourself in there, the way you made everyone believe we were really Mariette felt too real." Emma's cheeks burned. "I was just doing what you asked me to do." "I know, and you did it flawlessly." His voice was strained. Maybe too flawlessly. They drove home in silence, the tension between them thick enough to cut. When they arrived at the mansion, Daniel walked her to the guest suite. "Tomorrow we have lunch with the Yamamoto family, and then the charity gala in the evening," he said, his professional mask firmly back in place. "I'll be ready," Emma replied. Daniel hesitated at her door. "Emma, I need you to know something. What happened tonight, the way we were together, it can't mean anything beyond this week. I hope you understand that." His words hit her like a slap. Emma forced herself to meet his eyes. "Of course, Mr. Blackwood, I understand perfectly. This is just business." Something passed across his face at her formal address, but he simply nodded. "Good night, Emma." As she closed the door behind him, Emma leaned against it, her heart racing. She had convinced Mr. Yamamoto that their marriage was real, but in the process she had almost convinced herself. The line between pretense and reality was blurring faster than she had anticipated. She slipped out of her dress and into her nightgown, catching sight of herself in the mirror. The diamond ring caught the light, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine what it would feel like if it were real. If Daniel's gentle touches and admiring looks were genuine, if Grace's wish could somehow come true. But as she climbed into the luxurious bed, Emma reminded herself of the harsh reality. In 6 days, she would take off the ring, pack her bags, and return to her life as just the nanny. Daniel had made it clear that nothing about this week would change their relationship. She only hoped she could remember that when his touches felt so real, and his eyes held promises that she desperately wanted to believe. Outside her window, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, as vast and uncertain as the week that lay ahead. Emma closed her eyes and tried to prepare herself for 5 more days of pretending to be married to the man she loved, while knowing that every moment of happiness was just an illusion that would end when the deal was done. Dangerous ground the next morning brought an unexpected challenge. Emma woke to find Grace bouncing on her bed, something the little girl had never done before in her private quarters. "Emma, are you really married to Daddy now?" Grace asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Emma sat up, carefully choosing her words. "Grace, sweetheart, what makes you ask that?" "I heard Mrs. Peterson talking to the gardener. She said you were wearing a wedding ring and that you had dinner with important people last night." Grace examined the diamond ring on Emma's finger. "It's so pretty. Does this mean you're my mommy now?" Emma's heart ached at the hope in the child's voice. "Grace, you know I love you very much, but it's complicated." Grown-ups always say things are complicated when they don't want to explain, Grace said with remarkable wisdom for a 6-year-old. "But I'm not a baby anymore. I can understand." Before Emma could respond, Daniel appeared in the doorway. "Grace, what are you doing in here? Emma needs to get ready for our lunch meeting." "I was asking Emma about being my new mommy," Grace said matter-of-factly. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We've talked about this. Emma's your nanny, and she's helping Daddy with some business this week. That's all." Emma saw the confusion and hurt flash across Grace's face, and something inside her snapped. "Actually," Emma said, pulling Grace closer, "sometimes adults need time to figure out their feelings. Your daddy and I are still learning about each other." Daniel's eyes widened in surprise, but Grace beamed. "So you might stay forever?" Grace asked hopefully. "We'll see what happens," Emma said gently. "But no matter what, I'll always be part of your life, I promise." After Grace left for her morning art class, Daniel lingered in the doorway. "What was that about?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. She's a smart child, Daniel. Knows something is different. I thought it was kinder to give her hope than to crush her with the truth. Hope for what? Daniel stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Emma, we agreed this was temporary. Can't encourage her to believe otherwise. And what happens when this week is over? Emma stood, facing him. When I go back to being just the nanny, how do I explain to her why I'm not wearing your ring anymore? Why we stopped holding hands and looking at each other like we're in love? Daniel's face paled. I hadn't thought about that. You should have. Emma's voice was sharper than she intended. Grace isn't just a prop in your business deal. She's a little girl who's already lost one mother. How do you think she'll feel when she loses another? The words hung between them like a physical barrier. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Emma now recognized as his tell when he was overwhelmed. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I was so focused on saving the company that I didn't think about how this would affect Grace emotionally. Emma's anger softened at his genuine remorse. She's been asking for a mother for months, Daniel. In her mind, this week is a dream come true. When it ends, we'll figure out how to handle it, Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. The lunch with the Yamamoto family was held at their private estate in Malibu. Emma found herself seated between Daniel and Mrs. Yamamoto, a gracious woman who spoke excellent English and seemed genuinely interested in Emma's background. Daniel tells me you managed his household for 3 years before your marriage, Mrs. Yamamoto said over the appetizer. That must have given you wonderful insight into his character. Emma glanced at Daniel, who gave her an encouraging nod. Yes, I was fortunate to see him as a father first. The way he devoted himself to Grace, after losing his first wife, showed me what kind of man he truly was. And how did you know he was ready to love again? Mrs. Yamamoto asked with the directness that seemed to run in the family. The question caught Emma off guard. She felt Daniel's hand find hers under the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. I think Emma said slowly that love isn't something you're ever ready for. It just happens when you're brave enough to open your heart again. Hush. She felt Daniel's fingers tighten around hers, and when she looked at him, she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Very wise, Mrs. Yamamoto said approvingly. My husband was also a widower when we met. I knew he was ready to love again when he stopped talking about his late wife in the past tense and started talking about our future in the present tense. Daniel had never mentioned Rebecca once during their conversations. This week, after lunch, while the men discussed business on the terrace, Mrs. Yamamoto led Emma through her garden. You're very much in love with him, the older woman observed. It wasn't a question, and Emma didn't know how to respond without lying. It shows in the way you look at him, Mrs. Yamamoto continued, and in the way he looks at you, my husband. He's old-fashioned, but he's also very perceptive. He can tell when people are genuinely happy together. Emma's stomach churned with guilt. Mrs. Yamamoto, you don't need to explain anything, my dear. Love is complicated, especially when children are involved. She paused beside a fountain. Daniel is lucky to have found someone who clearly loves his daughter as much as she loves him. That evening, Emma stood in her suite, staring at the gown Daniel had chosen for the charity gala. It was a stunning emerald green that complemented her eyes with a low back and a neckline that was elegant but daring. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Emma, may I come in? Daniel's voice was softer than usual. Of course. He entered carrying a jewelry box. I thought you might need these for tonight. Inside the box was a set of emerald earrings and a matching necklace that probably cost more than Emma's annual salary. Daniel, these are beautiful, but I couldn't possibly they were Rebecca's, he said quietly. She would have wanted them to be worn by someone who loves Grace. Emma's hands trembled as she lifted the necklace. Are you sure? I'm sure. His voice was rough. Emma, about what you said this morning? About Grace getting hurt? You're right. I was being selfish. You were trying to save your company. That's not selfish, isn't it? Daniel moved closer. I asked you to pretend to be my wife without thinking about the consequences. For Grace, for you, he paused. For me. What do you mean? Daniel's green eyes met hers in the mirror. I mean that somewhere between yesterday and today, I stopped pretending. Emma's heart stopped. Daniel, I know this is crazy. I know it's not what we agreed to. But Emma, when I watch you with Grace, when I see how naturally you fit into our lives, when I feel how right it is to have you beside me, ... He trailed off, shaking his head. I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know what to do about it. Emma turned to face him, the necklace still in her hands. You can't say things like that. Why not? 'Cause in 4 days, this ends. You made that very clear last night. Daniel stepped closer, his hands coming up to cup her face. What if... It doesn't have to end, Daniel, don't. But even as she protested, Emma felt herself leaning into his touch. What if we made it real? He whispered. What if we stopped pretending and started living? Before Emma could respond, his lips were on hers, soft and desperate and full of all the emotion they had been hiding. Emma melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with all the love she had been holding inside for 2 years. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. We can't, Emma whispered against his lips. This is too complicated. Life is complicated, Daniel said, echoing her words from lunch. But this, what we have right now, this is simple. I love you, Emma. I think I've loved you for longer than I want to admit. Emma's heart soared and broke at the same time. And what happens when the business deal is over? When reality sets in, when you remember that I'm just a nanny from Texas. Who doesn't belong in your world? You belong wherever you want to belong, Daniel said fiercely. I want you to belong with us, with Grace and me. Emma searched his eyes, looking for any sign that this was just the emotion of the moment talking. But what she saw there was steady and sure and absolutely terrifying. I need time to think, she said finally. Daniel nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. Of course. But Emma, tonight at the gala, I'm not going to be pretending anymore. I'm going to be a man who's proud to have the woman he loves on his arm. As he left her room, Emma sank onto the bed, her mind reeling. Everything had changed in the space. Of a single conversation, the careful boundaries she had built around her heart were crumbling. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for what lay on the other side. She looked at the emerald necklace in her hands, remembering Daniel's words about Rebecca wanting them worn by someone who loved Grace. But what about someone who loved Daniel? Someone who was terrified of losing everything she had never dared to dream she could have. The gala was in 2 hours, and Emma knew that whatever happened there would determine the course of the rest of her life. She only hoped she was brave enough to reach for the happiness that was finally within her grasp. The gala, the Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom, glittered like a jewel box, filled with California's elite gathered for the annual Children's Cancer Research Foundation Gala. Emma stood at Daniel's side, her hand resting on his arm as they posed for photographers. The emerald gown fit her perfectly, and Rebecca's jewelry caught the light with every movement. You're radiant, Daniel murmured in her ear, and Emma felt the truth of his feelings in the warmth of his voice. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, a photographer called out. One more shot, please. Emma smiled automatically, but her heart raced at being called Mrs. Blackwood. After their conversation earlier, every interaction felt loaded with possibility and danger. Mr. Yamamoto approached them with his wife, both dressed impeccably for the formal evening. Daniel, Emma, Mr. Yamamoto greeted them warmly. You both look magnificent tonight. Thank you, Emma replied, accepting Mrs. Yamamoto's kiss on her cheek. This is such a beautiful event. Yes, and for such an important cause, Mrs. Yamamoto added. Children's health is something close to every parent's heart. As they moved through the cocktail hour, Emma noticed how naturally she and Daniel moved together. His hand found the small of her back when guiding her through crowds. She straightened his tie when it went slightly askew. And they shared private smiles that felt completely genuine. The Yamamoto merger is looking very promising, Daniel told her during a quiet moment. Mr. Yamamoto's impressed with you, said you remind him of his own wife when she was young. That's very kind of him, Emma said, but her mind was on their earlier conversation. Daniel, about what you said before, ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced. "Please take your seats for dinner." The evening continued with speeches and silent auction presentations. Emma found herself genuinely enjoying the company at their table, discussing everything from art to education with the other couples. For the first time in days, she wasn't thinking about the performance she was giving. She was simply being herself. "Emma, dear," Mrs. Yamamoto said, "during dessert, you mentioned that you've been involved with Grace's education. What are your thoughts on childhood development?" Emma launched into a passionate discussion about the importance of emotional intelligence in children. Drawing on her years of experience with Grace and her own education in child psychology, she noticed Daniel, watching her with pride in something deeper that made her pulse quicken. "Your wife is quite remarkable," Mr. Yamamoto told Daniel. "She has the rare combination of intelligence and compassion that makes for an excellent mother." "Yes," Daniel said, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. "She is remarkable." When the dancing began, Daniel led Emma onto the floor. The orchestra played a slow waltz, and Emma found herself lost in the sensation of being held in his arms. "You're an excellent dancer," she said, surprised by how easily they moved together. "Rebecca insisted on lessons," Daniel replied, then paused. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned her." "It's okay," Emma said softly. "She was part of your life. She's Grace's mother. I would never want you to forget her." Daniel's arms tightened around her. "Emma, what you said earlier about not belonging? In my world, you're wrong. You've made this world better just by being in it." Emma looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his green eyes. "Daniel, I know I'm asking a lot. I know this is complicated and scary and probably crazy, but I can't imagine going back to the way things were before this week. I can't imagine not waking up knowing you're part of my life, not just as Grace's nanny, but as the woman I love." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when this week is over, I don't want it to be over. I want to take you to dinner, not as part of a business deal, but because I want to spend time with you. I want to hold your hand because I love you, not because someone is watching. I want to give you a real ring and mean it." Emma stopped dancing, staring at him in shock. "Daniel, you don't know what you're saying?" "I know exactly what I'm saying." His voice was steady and sure. "I'm saying I want to marry you, Emma, for real. Not for business, not for convenience, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you and Grace." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. This is all happening so fast. But sometimes love doesn't wait for convenient timing. Daniel cupped her face gently. "Emma, I've been alone for 2 years. I thought I was protecting Grace and myself by keeping everyone at a distance. But you've been right here all along, loving us both, taking care of us, making our house a home. I was just too afraid to see it. And what if it doesn't work?" Emma whispered. "What if we try this and it ruins everything? What happens to Grace then?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Daniel said. "But Emma, what if it does work? What if we're meant to be a family? Are you willing to walk away from that possibility because you're afraid?" Before Emma could answer, Mr. Yamamoto approached them on the dance floor. "Excuse me for interrupting," he said with a slight bow. "Daniel, might I have a word?" Daniel released Emma reluctantly. "Of course. I wanted to tell you that my company is prepared to move forward with the merger. The papers will be ready for signing tomorrow." Emma saw Daniel's relief, but also something else, pride. Not just in closing the deal, but in the woman standing beside him. "Thank you, Mr. Yamamoto," Daniel said. "This means everything to my family. Your wife has been instrumental in our decision," Mr. Yamamoto continued, turning to Emma. "My wife and I have been married for 35 years, and we recognize genuine love when we see it. The way you two support each other, the way you speak about your daughter with such shared affection, it reminds us of ourselves when we were young." Emma's throat tightened. If only he knew the truth. "However," Mr. Yamamoto continued, "there is one condition." Daniel tensed. "What kind of condition?" "Nothing dramatic," Mr. Yamamoto smiled. "My wife would like to meet your daughter before we finalize everything. She believes that a man's true character is revealed in how his children behave." Would it be possible for Grace to join us for lunch tomorrow? Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Grace was smart, but she was also 6 years old. What if she said something that revealed the truth about their arrangement? Of course, Daniel said smoothly. Grace would love to meet you both. After Mr. Yamamoto left, Daniel turned to Emma. Are you okay? You look pale. Daniel, what if Grace says something? What if she tells them that we're not really married? She won't, Daniel said with confidence. Grace wants us to be together. She'll play along. You're asking a 6-year-old to lie to strangers. I'm asking her to help us become a real family. Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. Emma, after tonight, after everything we've shared, can you honestly tell me this still feels like pretending to you? Emma looked around the ballroom, at the couples dancing, at the elegant setting, the life she had never imagined she could have. No, she whispered. It doesn't feel like pretending anymore. Then marry me, Daniel said, his voice urgent. Not for the business deal, not for Grace, but for us. Because I love you and I think you love me too? Emma's heart stopped. Daniel, I know you love me, he continued. I can see it in your eyes when you look at me. I can feel it in the way you touch me. I can hear it in your voice when you say my name. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. I do love you, she admitted. I've loved you for 2 years, and this week has been torture because I kept forgetting it wasn't real. Then let's make it real, Daniel said, taking her hands. Let's stop pretending and start living. Emma opened her eyes and looked at him, this man who had unknowingly held her heart for so long. What about your world? Your social circle? I'm still just a nanny from Texas. You're the woman I love, Daniel said fiercely. You're the woman who makes Grace laugh, who runs my household better than any professional, who handled tonight like you were born to it. You're the woman who makes me want to be a better man, a better father. That's not just a nanny from Texas. That's the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks. This is crazy. The best things in life usually are, Daniel said, wiping away her tears with his thumb. Emma Torres, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Grace's mother, and the love of my life? Emma looked into his green eyes and saw her future there. Not the life she had planned, but the life she had always dreamed of. A life with the man she loved and the little girl who had stolen her heart. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Daniel's face lit up with joy, and he spun her around the dance floor, both of them laughing through their tears. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, and Emma knew that this time there was no pretending. This was real, and it was theirs. As they swayed together on the dance floor, Emma caught sight of their reflection in the ballroom's mirrors. She saw a woman in an emerald gown, wearing diamonds that caught the light, dancing with a man who looked at her like she was his entire world. For the first time in her life, she looked like she belonged in this glittering world. But more importantly, she felt like she belonged in Daniel's arms, in Grace's life, in the family they were about to create together. The scared little girl from Texas was gone, replaced by a woman who was brave enough to reach for the love she deserved. The deal with Yamamoto Corporation was important, but it was no longer the most important thing happening this week. Emma had found her home, her family, and her future in the arms of the man she loved. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. The truth Emma woke the next morning in Daniel's arms, sunlight streaming through the master bedroom windows. Somewhere during the night, the last barriers between them had crumbled completely. She was no longer the nanny sleeping in the guest. Sweet she was, the woman Daniel loved, lying in the bed they would share for the rest of their lives. Good morning, beautiful, Daniel murmured against her hair. Good morning, Emma replied, still marveling at how natural this felt. Are you having any second thoughts? Only about waiting so long to tell you how I felt, Daniel said, tightening his arms around her. Meh, I meant everything I said last night. Before Emma could respond, the bedroom door burst open. Daddy, Emma. Grace bounced into the room, then stopped short when she saw them together. Her eyes widened, and a smile spread across her face. Are you really married now? Emma felt her cheeks burn, but Daniel just laughed. "Come here, sunshine," he said, sitting up and pulling Grace onto the bed. "Emma and I have something to tell you." Grace scrambled between them, her eyes bright with excitement. "Are you going to be my real mommy now?" Emma's heart melted. "Would you like that, Grace?" "I wished for it every night," Grace said solemnly. "I told Mommy Rebecca in heaven that I wanted her to send me a new mommy, and she sent me you." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Grace, your daddy and I love each other very much, and we both love you. We want to be a real family." But Daniel added gently, "We need to do this the right way. Emma and I are going to get married for real, with a beautiful ceremony where you can be our flower girl." Grace clapped her hands. "Can I help plan the wedding?" "Of course you can," Emma laughed. "But first, we need to get ready for lunch. Remember, we're meeting Mr. and Mrs. Yamamoto today." Grace's expression grew serious. "Are they the people who might take our house away?" Emma and Daniel exchanged glances. They had tried to shield Grace from the business concerns, but clearly, she had picked up more than they realized. "They're here to help Daddy's company," Emma explained carefully. "And they want to meet you because they think children are very important." "Should I tell them you're going to be my new mommy?" Grace asked. Emma's stomach clenched. Still needed to maintain the pretense for a few more hours. "Actually," Daniel said slowly, "maybe we should tell them the truth." Emma stared at him. "Daniel, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't want to lie anymore, especially not to our daughter." He looked at Grace. "Sweetheart, can you keep a secret for just a little while longer?" Grace nodded solemnly. "Emma and I haven't been married this whole time. We're pretending because I thought it would help with my business. But yesterday, I realized I didn't want to pretend anymore. I asked Emma to marry me for real, and she said yes." Grace processed this information with remarkable calm. "So you were pretending to be married, but now you're going to really be married." "That's right. And I can still be your flower girl." "Absolutely." Grace seemed satisfied with this explanation. "Can I go tell Mrs. Peterson?" "In a little while," Emma said. "First, let's get ready for lunch." An hour later, Emma stood in the foyer, nervously adjusting her dress. She had chosen a simple but elegant outfit, hoping to make a good impression on the Yamamoto family. More importantly, she was preparing to tell them the truth about her relationship with Daniel. "Are you ready for this?" Daniel asked, straightening his tie. "Ready as I'll ever be," Emma replied. "Daniel, are you sure about telling them the truth? You could lose everything." "I could lose everything if I keep lying," Daniel said. "Emma, last night I realized something. The company is important, but it's not more important than our integrity. I want to build our marriage on honesty, not deception." Grace appeared on the stairs, dressed in a pretty pink dress with her hair in perfect curls. "I'm ready." The lunch was held at Daniel's favorite restaurant, a quiet place with a private dining room. Mr. and Mrs. Yamamoto were already seated when they arrived. Emma noticed how their faces lit up when they saw Grace. "Must be Grace," Mrs. Yamamoto said warmly. "Your parents have told us so much about you." Grace curtsied politely, just as Emma had taught her. "Thank you for coming to meet us." The first part of the lunch went smoothly. Grace charmed both Yamamoto parents with her intelligence and good manners. She told them about her art classes, her favorite books, and her love of pancakes. Emma felt proud watching her, this little girl who had become so important to her heart. "Grace, your father tells me that Emma has been taking care of you for 3 years," Mr. Yamamoto said. "She must be a wonderful mother." "She's the best," Grace said earnestly.
Yes.
"She reads to me every night and helps me with my homework and makes the best princess pancakes. And she's going to be my real mommy soon." Emma felt her heart stop.
Elvis?
Was the moment of truth. "Grace," Daniel said gently, "remember what we talked about?" Grace nodded solemnly, then looked at the Yamamoto parents. "I have something to tell you." Emma and Daddy were pretending to be married this week because Daddy thought it would help with his business. Odd. But then they fell in love for real, and now they're going to really get married. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma felt her cheeks burn as she waited for Mr. Yamamoto's reaction. "I see," Mr. Yamamoto said slowly. "So you have been deceiving us." "Yes," Daniel said, his voice steady. I'm sorry. I was desperate to save my company, and I thought if you believed I was married, you'd be more likely to do business with me. It was wrong, and I apologize. Emma found her voice. Mr. Yamamoto, I want you to know that while our marriage wasn't real, our feelings for each other are genuine. Our love for Grace is absolutely real. Mrs. Yamamoto had been quiet throughout this exchange, but now she spoke. And when did you realize your feelings were real? I think I've loved Emma for a long time, Daniel said. But I was too afraid to admit it, even to myself. This week, pretending to be married to her made me realize that I didn't want to pretend anymore. I wanted it to be real. And you, Emma? Mrs. Yamamoto asked. When did you know? Yama looked at Grace, then at Daniel, then back at the Yamamoto. Parents, I've been in love with Daniel for 2 years. I thought it was hopeless because I was just the nanny. But this week, I realized that love doesn't care about social class or job titles. It just cares about whether two people are meant to be together. Mr. Yamamoto leaned back in his chair, studying them. You risked everything to tell us the truth. Yes, Daniel said. Because I realized that building a business on lies isn't worth it. I want to build a life with Emma and Grace based on honesty and love. Mr. Yamamoto was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he began to laugh. My dear wife, he said to Mrs. Yamamoto, what did I tell you yesterday? Mrs. Yamamoto smiled. You said you could tell they were really in love, but that something felt rehearsed about their story. Emma stared at them in confusion. I don't understand. We knew you were pretending, Mr. Yamamoto said kindly. We have been married for 35 years. We know what real love looks like, and we also know what people look like when they're trying too hard to appear in love. But you could see that underneath the pretense your feelings were genuine, Mrs. Yamamoto added. The way you looked at each other, the way you both looked at Grace, the way you moved together, cannot be faked. Daniel found his voice. So you knew we were lying? We knew you were pretending to be married, Mr. Yamamoto corrected. But we also knew you weren't pretending to love each other. We were waiting to see if you would be honest with us. Emma felt tears of relief sliding down her cheeks, and now we are even more impressed, Mrs. Yamamoto said. You risked your business deal to tell us the truth. That shows integrity. And Grace, she turned to the little girl. You were very brave to tell us the truth, too. Grace beamed. So you're not mad? Not mad at all, Mr. Yamamoto said. In fact, we would be honored to do business with your father. We would be very happy to attend your parents' wedding. Emma felt Daniel's hand find hers under the table, and she squeezed it tightly. There's just one condition, Mr. Yamamoto added with a twinkle in his eye. We want to be invited to the real wedding. Of course, Daniel laughed. Emma, what do you say? Should we invite them to our wedding? I think that would be perfect, Emma said, her heart full of joy. 3 months later, Emma stood in the bridal suite of the Blackwood mansion, looking at herself in the mirror. Her wedding dress was simple, but elegant. She wore Rebecca's pearl necklace that Daniel had given her with his late wife's blessing. Found in a letter Rebecca had written to him before she died. Emma, you look beautiful, Grace said, bouncing excitedly in her flower girl dress. Thank you, sweetheart, Emma replied, adjusting Grace's flower crown. Are you ready to walk down the aisle? I've been ready for months, Grace said. I can't wait to call you Mommy. Emma knelt down and hugged Grace tightly. I love you, Grace. I'm so happy we're going to be a real family. I love you too, Mommy, Grace said, and Emma's heart soared. A knock on the door interrupted them. Emma, it's time, called Daniel's best man. Emma took a deep breath and walked to the French doors that opened onto the garden. The ceremony was being held outside with the Pacific Ocean as their backdrop. She could see the guests seated in white chairs, including Mr. and Mrs. Yamamoto in the front row. And there at the altar stood Daniel in his black tuxedo, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. When their eyes met, he smiled, and Emma knew that this was right. This was where she belonged. Grace walked down the aisle first, scattering rose petals and beaming at the guests. Then it was Emma's turn. As she walked toward Daniel, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. From nanny to fake wife to real bride, It had been a path full of surprises and challenges. But as Daniel took her hands and they exchanged vows they had written themselves, Emma knew that every step had been worth it. They had found love in the most unexpected way, and now they were promising to love each other for the rest of their lives. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister said. "You may kiss your bride." Daniel's kiss was tender and full of promise, and Emma felt like the luckiest woman in the world as they walked back down the aisle together. Hand in hand with Grace skipping beside them, Emma smiled at the guests. Her mother, cancer-free thanks to the experimental treatment, was crying happy tears. Her brother Jake, now a successful doctor, was applauding enthusiastically. The Yamamoto family was smiling warmly, and all of Daniel's friends and business associates were celebrating with them. But most importantly, Emma was walking into her new life with the man she loved and the daughter who had chosen her as a mother. The scared girl from Texas was gone, replaced by a woman who had found her place in the world. That evening, after the reception, Emma and Daniel stood on their bedroom balcony, looking out at the ocean. Oh, Grace was asleep in her room, exhausted. From the excitement of the day, no regrets, Daniel asked, wrapping his arms around Emma from behind. None, Emma said, leaning back against him. This has been the most perfect day of my life. Even though it started with a lie, Emma turned in his arms. It started with a business arrangement, but it became the greatest love story of my life. Daniel kissed her softly. "Mrs. Blackwood, I love you." "I love you too, Mr. Blackwood," Emma replied. Now and forever. As they stood there together, watching the stars reflect on the water, Emma thought about how dramatically her life had changed. A year ago, she was just a nanny, worried about her family's financial problems. Now she was a wife, a mother, and a woman who had found her place in the world. The deal with Yamamoto Corporation had been successfully completed. Daniel's company was thriving, and Grace was happier than she had ever been. But more than that, Emma had found her home in the arms of the man she loved, surrounded by the family she had always dreamed of having. Sometimes love came in the most unexpected ways, disguised as a business arrangement or a desperate proposal. But real love, Emma had learned, had a way of revealing itself when the time was right. She and Daniel had found their time, their place, and their happiness together. The end asterisk. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. For more heart-touching tales, wishing you a beautiful day now. Sit back and enjoy the story.